Alright, welcome to students of 8th standard maths chapter number 13. We are going to talk about the congruence of triangles, guys. Now first of all, congruence means what, guys? Let me tell you, if suppose we are having two triangles with us and we want to relate those two triangles, we want to put some relation between those two triangles, so we can relate the two triangles by using these two properties called as congruency and similarity. Okay, now congruency is there in your 8th standard, 9th standard as well as 10th standard. Throughout all the three standards, congruency we are going to use, so that's very important topic, guys. And similarity we are going to use in the 9th standard and the 10th standard. There's only one exercise in the 9th standard, but there is a whole dedicated chapter for similarity in the 10th standard. So let's talk about the congruency first. What do you mean by congruency? You can see the sign of congruency over here. There is a somewhat inverted S and is equal to sign over here. So this inverted S indicates both the triangles will have same shape. If you see the lower triangles XYZ and LMN, these two triangles are having same shape, but along with that they are having same size. Means XYZ and LMN are exactly replica of each other. They're exactly replica of each other. They are ditto looking to each other. That's why these two triangles are having same shape, same size. That's why these two triangles are said to be congruent to each other. They are said to be congruent to each other. But if I talk about these two triangles, triangle ABC and triangle PQR, you can see their shapes are same. Means ABC is a right angle triangle, triangle PQR is also a right angle triangle, but in these two triangles only their shapes are same and not the sizes, and that's why we are carrying forward this sign only. So it means these two triangles are similar to each other because they are having only same shape and they are not having same size. Alright, now let's move to the next topic. There is a one word throughout the chapter which is quite important to understand the meaning of that thing. There is a concept, rather I will say. What do you mean by one-to-one correspondence? What do you mean by one-to-one correspondence? It means what? These two triangles are there, okay, and these two triangles are, let's assume they are congruent to each other. They are congruent to each other. So one-to-one correspondence does mean which vertex of first triangle is equal or is corresponding to the vertex of second triangle. Okay, now इसके लिए मैंने एक छोटा सा नोट तुम लोग को लिख के दिया है. You just read the note, you will get entire idea. नोट में क्या लिखा है मैंने? Put three vertices of first triangle on those three vertices of second triangle. Okay, यहाँ के तीन vertices वहां के तीन वर्टाइसेस पे रख के देखो in a such a way that both triangles will match exactly और match perfectly. तो मैं ये समझाने के लिए क्या करता हूं, देखो, अगर मैंने XYZ ऐसे के ऐसे रखा PQR पे, तो obviously it is not going to match with the shape, right? They are not matching the shape. But suppose अगर मैंने इसको थोड़ा सा हल्का सा रोटेट किया, one more time, now you see they are perfectly matching. Their shapes are perfectly matching. There is a very nice word in English, their orientations are perfectly matching, and that's why what we will comment a very simple thing, that point P corresponds to point Y. The point P corresponds to point Y. मतलब कि जो रोल point P सेकेंड ट्रायंगल में है वही रोल point Y का फर्स्ट ट्रायंगल में है. यहाँ पे से को point Q, I will say point Q corresponds to point Z over here, and there is a point R which corresponds to point X in the first triangle. So वन टू वन करस्पॉन्डेंस का मीन ये है कि कौन से तीन पॉइंट ऑफ फर्स्ट ट्रायंगल, कौन से तीन पॉइंट ऑफ सेकेंड ट्रायंगल साथ में होने चाहिए ताकि दोनों ट्रायंगल्स मैच हो जाए. तो यहाँ पे ट्राइंगल्स को मैच करने के लिए पॉइंट P को Y के साथ जोड़ना पड़ेगा या पॉइंट P को Y के ऊपर रखना पड़ेगा, पॉइंट Q को Z के ऊपर रखना पड़ेगा एंड पॉइंट R should be placed on point X. Then the both triangles will match perfectly. So this is called as one to one correspondence कि कौन सा पॉइंट का नाता कौन से पॉइंट से है. ठीक है, let's move to the second slide. Okay, now here we are considering the two cases. This is the very first case. In this case we are considering if two given triangles are already congruent. They are already congruent, so we are discussing the results of congruent triangles. So these results can be of two types, about the angles and about the sides. First of all, जो हम लोग ने फर्स्ट स्लाइड में किया था वही हम लोग यहाँ पे करेंगे. वन टू वन करस्पॉन्डेंस पहले कर लेते हैं अपन. और वन टू वन करस्पॉन्डेंस करने के लिए मुझे क्या करना पड़ेगा, मुझे सेकेंड ट्राइंगल को थोड़ा सा रोटेट करना पड़ेगा और मैं इस तरह से रोटेट करूंगा ताकि वो फर्स्ट ट्राइंगल के साथ मैच हो जाए. मैच हुआ? नहीं. अब हो गया? ओ यस, अभी हो गया. दोनों ट्राइंगल का ओरिएंटेशन मैच हो गया. तो अभी हम लोग करस्पॉन्डेंस लिख देते हैं पहले. व्हाट इज द करस्पॉन्डेंस over here? The point A, yes, come on, tell me. Point A is corresponding to point X. Point B is corresponding to point what is that? It is Z, by the way. It's looking like N, but that is Z. And point C corresponds to point Y. So this is the one-to-one correspondence. This is the one-to-one correspondence. Okay. And later you can name the triangle in the same pattern. If you are naming the triangle like A, B, C, then you will follow the same pattern. Like what you will say, okay, triangle A, B, C is congruent to triangle. So here, while naming the second triangle, you have to follow the one-to-one correspondence. So A is corresponding to X. A first position पे है ना, तो इधर X भी फर्स्ट पोजीशन पे आएगा. B corresponds to Z. B सेकेंड पोजीशन पे है, तो यहाँ पे क्या आएगा? यहाँ पे आएगा Z. And C is on third position, तो यहाँ पे आएगा Y. So this is how we will name the triangles. Okay. So about the angles, the corresponding angles, that is, let's say angle, where is this red mark? Yeah, so this angle A is corresponds to angle X. Means what? Angle A will be congruent. यहाँ पे congruent का मतलब लेंगे हम लोग equal. यहाँ पे congruent का मतलब लेंगे हम लोग equal. ठीक है. So angle A will be equal to angle X. यानी कि angle A अगर 30 डिग्री है तो angle X भी रहेगा 30 डिग्री, right? Then there is a second correspondence, angle B and angle Z. Angle B and angle Z. Okay, this type of mark I will give. So angle B corresponds to angle Z. जितना भी angle B का डिग्री रहेगा उतना ही डिग्री angle Z का रहेगा. ठीक है. And there is our third angle. That is angle C congruent to angle Y. Okay, so this is the case about the angles. Okay, so if two triangles are already congruent, so each angle of first triangle will be equal to the corresponding angle of second triangle. Okay, now let's talk about the sides. अभी साइड में भी देखो, तुम लोगों ने इतना नाम तो लिख दिया है. ठीक है, तो साइड भी हम लोग कैसे मैच कर सकते हैं. देखिए कैसे मैच करेंगे. AB will be congruent to XZ. करेक्ट है. मैच विद द ओरिएंटेशन. BC will be congruent to ZY and AC will be congruent to XY. Okay, we'll write this thing. I will write in a very short manner. AB, AB congruent to XZ, BC congruent to ZY, and AC congruent to XY. Okay, so these are the results of two congruent triangles. If two triangles are already congruent, it means their corresponding angles will be equal, their corresponding sides will be equal. अगर AB 5 सेंटीमीटर है तो XZ भी कितना रहेगा 5 सेंटीमीटर. अगर BC 6 सेंटीमीटर है तो ZY भी कितना रहेगा 6 सेंटीमीटर. इन दिस वे. ओके, एंड इस स्लाइड में हम लोग ने 1-to-1 करस्पॉन्डेंस को फिर से रिवाइज किया. लेट्स गो टू द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड. ओके, नाउ इन दिस केस let me first of all check whether video is playing or not. The toolbar is not visible. Okay, let's make it visible. Yeah, now in this slide we are discussing the second case. Like if two given triangles are not congruent initially, these are looking like congruent but they are not congruent initially, so what we will do? So we will use test. We will use different types of test. Okay, so when two triangles are not congruent initially, we are going to use different types of test, out of which the first test we are discussing over here. The first test is SSS test. SSS test, it means what? The side XY. Okay, let's first of all do our very initial thing. Let's get the 1-to-1 correspondence done. Okay, so I have selected the second triangle. I am rotating it. मैच हुआ? नहीं. मैच हो गया. तो चलो, अगर मैच हो ही गया है तो 1-to-1 correspondence भी लिख दो. कौन किससे correspond करता है? Point X is corresponding to point A, point Y is corresponding to point B, and point Z is corresponding to point C. Okay, this is our 1-to-1 correspondence is done. Now in this triangle what was given initially is, ये दोनों congruent नहीं है बॉस. ये दोनों triangle initially congruent नहीं है, पर your XY is equals to AB. This was 4, this was also 4. Then your YZ was equals to the BC. This was 7 and this was also 7. And your XZ was equal to the AC. This was your 6 and this was your 6. Now these two triangles are not congruent initially, but see, this type of sides are given. This type of values of sides are given. So what we will say here, we will say the XY is congruent to AB. Okay, then we will say the YZ is congruent to BC, and the last we will say XZ is congruent to AC. Okay, means what? All three sides are contributing in making these two triangles congruent to each other. I will repeat my statement. Three sides of first triangle and second triangle are contributing in making these two triangles congruent, and that's why we will say by SSS test these two triangles are, by SSS test these two triangles, we can write the name now, right? We can write the name by using current 1-to-1 correspondence. These two triangles are congruent to each other. I will write the name very carefully by using the 1-to-1 correspondence. Triangle XYZ is congruent to triangle ABC. Okay, so this is what about your first test. Now there is this second test we are having. We are having SAS. Okay, so again the orientation is mismatching, so we will try to fix the orientation. Means okay, while finding the correct orientation, what we are doing actually, we are actually trying to find one-to-one correspondence. We are trying to find one-to-one correspondence. Okay, let's rotate the triangle. Let's rotate more. Yeah, I think this vertices is missing over there, so I will name that vertices as A. Okay, so now you see the orientation is matching. So thereby we got our one-to-one correspondence. So let's write that first. Point X resembles to point A, point Y is corresponding to point B, and point Z is corresponding to point C. Okay, chalo. Now what is the SAS test of the congruency? Again I will say the same sentence, that these two triangles are not declared congruent. These two triangles are not declared congruent initially, but some information is there, guys. Some information is there. Let's try to find what information is there. Here is your XY and AB. When I observe, I found them as 5 centimeter each. Then I found this one angle. Angle XYZ from the first triangle, angle ABC from the second triangle, and both angles were 30 degree. And I observed the another side of both triangles. These were about 7 and 7. So what I concluded is, in these two triangles, let's say क्या क्या इक्वल है, चलो हम लोग बोलते हैं पहले क्या क्या इक्वल है. यहाँ का XY और वहाँ का AB. ठीक है, यहाँ का एंगल XYZ और वहाँ का एंगल ABC. यहाँ का साइड YZ एंड वहाँ का साइड BC. तो इस तरह से there is one S, there is one A. S means side, A means angle, and there is another S. तो यहाँ पे the two sides and one angle, these three people are contributing in making these two triangles congruent. Okay, what I said, I will repeat my statement again. The two sides and one angle of both triangles are contributing in making these two triangles congruent, and that's why we will say by SAS test, where is my cursor? By SAS test, these two triangles are congruent, and I know how to write the name. I will write the name as XYZ is congruent to triangle ABC. Triangle XYZ is congruent to triangle ABC. Okay, so this was all about the SAS test. Now let's talk about the another test, that is ASA test. As the name is suggesting us, ASA means what? Two angles and one side. Two angles and one side of both triangles will be equal. So here I have given some values. You can find from these values, like angle Y is 110, angle P is also 110. So angle, I will say here, angle Y is congruent to angle P, angle Z is congruent to angle Q. All right, and there in between these two angles, there is a side YZ is congruent to side QR. Okay, suppose this is your 3 centimeter, and sorry, my mistake, it's not QR, it's PQ. Okay, this is also 3. Yeah, so here what we will say is two angles and a side trapped between those two angles. Two angles and a side trapped between those two angles, these are equal. So that's why here two angles and one side are contributing in making these two triangles congruent. Okay, so that's why what we will say. अच्छा, एक चीज अपना रह गया है यहाँ पे, कौन सा चीज बोलो? one-to-one correspondence, one-to-one correspondence. And for that, what I will do is I will select this triangle and then I will rotate. Okay, now we get the same orientation. So let's talk about the, okay, this is what the point R. Okay, okay. So let's write the one-to-one correspondence. Angle X, is or angle S नहीं लिखते हैं, point X corresponds to R, then point Y corresponds to point P, point Z corresponds to point Q. Okay, so this is the one-to-one correspondence. And now we will write the name of triangles. Triangle XYZ is congruent to triangle RPQ by ASA test. Okay, so this is what your ASA test. Two angles will be equal and one side which is trapped between those two angles will be equal. Okay, this is the ASA test. Let's go to the next test. Okay, now this is a very rare case actually. बहुत मतलब मोस्ट ऑफ ये हम लोग को यूज़ कभी करना नहीं पड़ेगा इन फ्यूचर ऑल्सो. इन फ्यूचर हम लोग ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हम लोग का जो फोकस रहेगा वो रहेगा SSS पे, उसके बाद में ASA एंड SAS एंड देयर इज़ अनदर टेस्ट दैट इज़ द हाइपोटेन्यूस साइड टेस्ट. ठीक है, तो ये बहुत रेयर केस है लेकिन फिर भी चलो डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. बेसिकली AAS और SAA, this is the another form or this is the another version of ASA. This is the another version of ASA. You see what is the difference? Again यहाँ पे angle B, you can see angle B is equal to angle Y, both are 70 degree. Angle C is equal to angle Z, both are 50 degree. And angle side AC, you can see the single mark over here. So side AC is congruent to side XZ. So you can see again two angles are there and one side is there, but you see the sequence is different. In ASA two angles were there and one side which was trapped between two angles was there, correct है? लेकिन AAS में you see the sequence. There is the first angle, there is a second angle, and there is this third side, AAS. Okay, AAS. Or if you will follow the, now this is I'm following the anti-clockwise sense, right? AAS. You can follow the clockwise sense also. SAA. Okay, that's it. Okay, so this is the rare case, AAS or SAA. Okay, so let's do our one-to-one correspondence for this triangle as well. We will rotate this stuff. Oh my god, yeah, now it is matching. Okay, now it is matching. Okay, so here what we will say that, and see हम लोगों ने यहाँ पे correspondence भी लिखा था, किधर गया correspondence? अच्छा चलो अभी लिख लेते हैं. Correspondence A is corresponds to X, then B is corresponds to Y, and C is corresponds to Z. ठीक है? So what we will say, triangle ABC is congruent to triangle XYZ by AAS test. Okay, this was about your rare case. Now guys, there is a last test which we are going to talk about. The last test, that is the hypotenuse side test. And let me tell you, I have written in the bracket as well, this is not a different test. Hypotenuse side test is the special case of SAS. Okay, SAS you can say, or AAS you can say. Okay, now in hypotenuse side test, it is specially applicable for only right angle triangles. This is only applicable for right angled triangles. Okay, and you see here angle Q is angle S, both are equal. Angle Q is congruent to angle X and both are 90 degree. Both are 90 degree. Okay? So this is the very first requirement for the hypotenuse side test. Then you can see, since there is a hypotenuse, means what? Hypotenuse क्या होता है अपने को पता है, जहाँ पे भी 90 डिग्री है वहाँ के सामने वाला, the side opposite to 90 degree, the side opposite to 90 degree is called as hypotenuse. So here PR, which is the hypotenuse of first triangle, and here the YZ, which is the hypotenuse of second triangle, both are equal. So here the hypotenuses are equal and remaining two sides are there. So out of those two sides, any one side will be equal. So here you can say single mark, single mark. So here the QR from first triangle will be equal to the XY from second triangle. So यहाँ पे हम लोग सिंपली देख सकते हैं कि दोनों ट्रायंगल में एक एंगल तुम लोग का 90 डिग्री है और एक हाइपोटेनियस इक्वल है, और हाइपोटेनियस के अलावा जो दो साइड्स होते हैं उन दो साइड्स में से कोई एक साइड इक्वल है. तो यहाँ पे दिस इज व्हाट योर हाइपोटेनियस साइड टेस्ट. ये होने के बाद लेट्स डू आर 1-to-1 correspondence. Let's do our 1-to-1 correspondence. Let's rotate this triangle and try to match the orientation. Try to match the orientation. See, now the orientation is matching. So we will write our 1-to-1 correspondence. That is point P corresponds to point Y. Alright. Point Q corresponds to point X and point R corresponds to point Z. So here we will say triangle PQR is congruent to triangle YXZ. I will follow the same sequence, but by hypotenuse side test. By hypotenuse side test. Okay. So we have seen. I will revise these things in a very short manner. What we have seen the various tests, that is the SSS, when the all three sides of first triangle will be equal to all three sides of second triangle, and then, or rather we will say the corresponding sides. Then SAS, two sides, one angle. Then we will say talk about ASA, the two angles and one side which is in between those two angles. And then there was this rare case AAS or SAA. Okay, दो एंगल एक साइड, लेकिन एक साइड एक एंगल के बाद आएगा, मतलब दोनों एंगल के बीच में वाला नहीं रहेगा. सिंपल बात, दो एंगल के बीच में वाला नहीं रहेगा. दैट्स इट. इसी तरह से याद रखना है. एंड द लास्ट टेस्ट दैट वी टॉक अबाउट इज द हाइपोटेनियस साइड टेस्ट. In the next video we will be talking about the 13.1. Thank you so much.